I'm not playing, y'all. Did you ever have a kid, they get out of the bathtub and they start throwing their pajamas on so fast the pajamas are sticking to them? Was that ever you? Did you have a onesie at one point and you tried to stick it and your arm got about half? That's what I looked like up there after the baptism. Because I knew what was going to happen in here. It's Easter. If you can't be excited about that, if you can't be in a hurry about that to hear some good news from God, this ain't the place for you. We've had baptisms today. We woke up this morning in our right mind, mostly. And we're here with people that we love. Amen. I got a gift for you. It's not as extravagant as the gift Robert left downstairs. I hope you'll grab one of those. The drop of Jesus' blood and the message that comes with it. Thank you, Robert. He wanted to give a gift on his baptism. And it's not worth as much as Elder Kirk gave the kids. You see, inflation has hit the Holly household. But I hope you found a penny, and I hope you saw the sign that said, "Take one," from Pastor Scott. They were right by the bulletins. Maybe you didn't get one, but I hope you'll get one on the way out. You see, I'm not giving away dollars. I feel like the Apostle Peter at the gate when the man was begging, and Peter said, "Silver or gold I don't have to give you, but what I give you is far more valuable." So I want to give you each a penny because there's a story behind it. You see, there was this fella who was a salesman for a Fortune 500 company, and I wish I could remember the name of the company because it's a true story. I think I heard Wayne Smith tell this story. And the way the story goes is that this man was so successful in a year of sales that the owner of the Fortune 500 company invited he and his wife to dinner. Now that's a big deal. This is something they were nervous about, and they got all decked out to go to the nicest restaurant in town. Sure enough, they pull up, valet's right there. They'd never had valet. Not only that, but when the valet took the car, the owner of the company was waiting, opened the door for the wife, escorted them to the door of the restaurant, and just before they walked in, he looked down, bent over, and picked up a penny off of the ground and stuck it in his pocket. They went on with dinner, 4 courses, best meal the couple had ever had. And as the main course was being served, she said, "Sir, you're going to have to forgive me. It's just been bothering me. I've got to ask. I saw you pick up a penny before we came into this nice restaurant." And she said, "In this day and age, weren't you afraid that something was on that penny? And I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but did you need a penny? I mean, you have amassed this successful company. And I just wondered, did you do that one penny at a time?" And the gentleman took the penny from his pocket and he handed it gently to the lady and he said, "I want you to look on that penny. And if you did pick up a penny, if you followed directions and you got one, I'd like you to look at it right now. Look at the side that Abraham Lincoln is on." He said, "There is something on that penny, actually. And in fact, it's on every bit of currency that is minted in these United States." He said, "I want you to look at that. There's a motto on there. And it says, 'In God we trust.'" And he said, "You're not far off." He said, "In fact, I did build my entire company around that truth." He said, "In fact, I have tried to instill it in all of my employees. In fact, I have built my marriage and my community around that one simple phrase, 'In God we trust.'" He said, I still like to believe an entire country is being built on that idea." And he said, "I guess from that perspective, ma'am, you're right. I've built my company one penny at a time because you see, pennies have helped me from the beginning, through the good times and the bad, and I believe that pennies will see me through until the end. In God we trust." Y'all knew that was on the penny, right? You can see it a little bit better on the quarter, at least I can with my eyes these days. It's on the dime if you've got a magnifying glass. But what I hope Easter does for you today is it puts that idea on your heart. In God we trust, because that's really what Easter is for us. For Christians, it is the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Kentucky Derby, the NCAA championship, the playoffs in football, you name it. If you're not into sports, it's the biggest of the big. It is the day that makes all of the difference. In fact, the Apostle Paul said, without the resurrection, my life is useless, and our faith is in vain. Easter isn't just the end of death. It's the beginning of trust and a reminder each year that God isn't done yet. You see, God is a God of beginnings and endings. And all endings, God can make new beginnings. Have you ever felt that in your life? That you came and it was the last page of the book God has written, and yet there was another chapter yet to come. Some of you are going to graduate. That's not an ending. That's a beginning. Some of you have just gotten married. I hope you understand that that wasn't the ending of you being a free person. In fact, the one flesh model that God has created has freed you to both be who you're supposed to be. Some of you are retired. I can see at least one person that's about to retire. Retired people, is that the end? No. It's but a beginning. God is a God of beginnings and endings. The Easter story is not an ending story. It's a beginning story. In fact, the resurrection of Jesus just unleashes all of God's power on the world and makes a way for our resurrection. It's the best story, the ultimate story. It's the only story with the power to change your story, whatever that story may be. And so I'm bringing you today an acronym. And if you used to watch the old Roadrunner cartoons, you're going to know exactly what this acronym stands for. The acronym is TNT. All right, that's what Wile E. the Coyote used all the time, and it backfired on him. It's not going to backfire on you. It's the power of God that He gives us. The TNT, the first T is true. This story is powerful because it's true. Do you know most good things, you find out the truth at the ending? Have you ever read a good detective novel? They don't tell you the truth, that the butler didn't do it right at the very beginning. You have to wait till the end. Have you ever been to a wonderful symphony? And the best music is always the crescendo, or that last note that rings on into eternity. The climax of our worship service is not at the beginning. It's not the preaching. The climax of the worship service is when we, as children of God, can gather around the table of the Father and break bread and taste forgiveness. The success of our parenting is only revealed when our children reach adulthood. Your best work is only made known when the job is complete. Beginnings are a little misleading. Beginnings kind of scrub things, sanitize things, make all things hopeful. Married people, I'm talking to you now. Full of potential. Yes. But endings are where the truth shows up. And nowhere is this more clearer than in the story of Jesus Christ our Lord. It hasn't been that long since Christmas, so I know you can remember that scrubbed, sanitized version of Jesus' birth. Oh yeah, it was in a manger. But when you know the story of Jesus, this is really kind of a sedated version of the story of His life. In fact, if you follow His life along, you know that even despite the fact that this man could do miracles, despite the fact that this man was a healer, despite the fact that this man knew all the mysteries of God and would teach them, His disciples, those closest to Him, still didn't understand. His death, in fact, to them seemed final. Did you know that? Even when the women came back to tell the apostles, the 11, those wise guys, it seemed, I love that, Marley, it seemed like nonsense to them. This Jesus. But the end of his story is only the beginning of another story. Because his resurrection is the truth that surpasses all other truth. And I want you to focus on this one verse that they say to the women at the tomb. I've always wanted to preach on this because it's just a dart to me. Why do you seek the living amongst the dead? This is not an ending. This is a beginning. Why are you looking amongst the tomb for the life that you seek? He is not here. He has been risen. Remember. This is a day that we remember. Whew. Thanks be to God, we remember. It's the truth. And you know what I really love about this story? Ladies, this is for you. I want you to focus. You know what I love and truly admire about Luke's telling of this story? Luke, the physician, the one that worked with precision. He was a doctor. In the opening words of his gospel, he says, I am writing this to you, my friend Theophilus. This is his first verses of the gospel. I am writing this so you might have an orderly account. What he's saying is, this is the truth that surpasses all other truth. You've heard about this, but now I'm going to give you an orderly account of exactly the way it happened. And listen to the way he reveals that Jesus was raised. It was the women who were at the tomb. Can I tell you that in those days, their testimony held no legal weight in their society? That would have been foolish to have the women actually be the first witnesses. But why did Luke do it? Because it was the truth. Now, if I was writing it, Dr. Scott, I might have doctored that up a little bit so it had a little more veracity. I'm sorry, that's just my flesh. But Dr. Luke didn't do that. Luke said, this is the way it is. The women were the first at the tomb. And that's one of the reasons I believe this story. Because it was simply unbelievable. In fact, the men who were there didn't believe it themselves. It seemed like nonsense, and that Apostle Peter hopped up, and he did what Peter always did in his bold and brash ways. He runs to the tomb, he looks inside, he sees an empty tomb and linen cloth, and he doesn't understand. Here's the truth. God often trusts pivotal revelation to people we overlook. Let me put that one on you. The reason this is my favorite part of the story is because the resurrection's first whispers were translated through channels that everyone else would ignore. I love that. This is believable because it's true. TNT, I told you, powerful. The N is for nothing. This gift God has given us costs us nothing. It's free. Jesus did it all. Jesus paid it all, like the hymn says. I want to give you something else. I took the liberty this morning of writing down all the things that each of you have done without God's goodness. Hey, miracles aren't over with the apostles. I wrote down each thing that you have done in your life without God's goodness. You want to see it? I got it right here. There it is. Can you see it? This is what each of you have done without God's goodness. Let me walk it on down here. You know what this is? This is a blank sheet of paper. You and I have done, Pastor Michelle, you are an ordained minister of God. Do you know what you've done without God's goodness? Pastor Scott, you couldn't preach without God's goodness. I have done nothing without God's goodness. Now let me put another one on you. Here's what Easter means. Jesus went to the cross. He died on our behalf. He overcame sin so that we don't have to dwell in it. So all the list of shameful things that you pack around on your back, that people try to push off on you about you that aren't the truth that God has revealed to you, you carry those things around, don't you? You hear the gospel, you sit in the pews on Easter, but sometimes you just want to draw back a little bit. Do you know how much of all those sins and all those things God has? You know what God sees when He thinks about all those things because of Jesus' blood? I want to show you. It looks a lot like what you've done to earn God's goodness. This is what God sees when He looks at you because of Jesus Christ. One more thing. This is a pop quiz. Do you know what it costs you for all that goodness, for all that grace? This is as plain as I'm going to make the gospel this morning for you. Do you know what this cost you for God to forgive you, for God to love you unconditionally? It looks like the two other things. It costs nothing. I'm going to leave this here in case some of you need to take it home and be reminded. The grace of God is given freely. It's given freely. It doesn't cost me a dime. It doesn't cost you a dime. It doesn't cost y'all a dime. I'm going to go back up in here and I'm going to preach a few more minutes, and I promise I'll land this plane. But I want you to know that God's grace costs you nothing. Did you tell yourself you needed to be born? Did you do anything to draw your first breath? Have you done anything to keep drawing breath? No, we haven't. Because life is a gift. Everything that we have is a gift from God. You can say amen to that. Everything that we have is a gift from God. And if I send you a gift, and you see the Amazon man pull up in your driveway and he's packing that package to your door, you don't have to pull out your phone and try to Venmo me. Do you know what your job is if I send you a gift? Your job is to enjoy it, to embrace it, to be thankful. God has given us a gift that costs absolutely nothing. God, when He looks at you, despite your flaws and despite your humanness, He sees grace. He sees a clean slate. That baptismal water where we talk about, Robert, you've been washed free, and Fisher, when you do something in the future and you got to get beyond it, it's a clean piece of paper. God has washed you as white as snow. That's why we put on the white robes. Your life for God looks like a clean sheet of paper. It costs nothing. The women went to the tomb and they were looking for something. And it rings out in my ears still. Why do you seek the living amongst the dead? I don't know about y'all, but I can be found seeking the living amongst the dead quite often when I leave this space, when I leave this place. It costs nothing to seek grace where it's at. Here's the last T. If you can get that truth in your heart, it becomes trust. Truth alone won't really do it. But if you let that truth become trust, then it can transform you. Because this is the story that changes all other stories. If you believe this fact, your beginning will lead you somewhere, and your ending is only a place for God to make another beginning. Beginnings and endings. These guys that weren't there at the tomb nor at the cross, these guys that were failures, they were zeros, but they became heroes. Why? Because they trusted that it was true. And the same is true for me and you. Hey, do you know the only other time I've told this penny story was at a funeral? Well, that's not true. I just told it in the last service. But the only other time, the reason I remembered this story is because I preached it at the funeral of someone, and she used to tell her kids and grandkids to always pick up a penny. And I didn't think much about it when I preached that funeral, but you know how somebody has always told you that you always pick up pennies when the head's up. Did you ever hear that? Do you know where the in God we, I'm sure you know where in God we trust is now. I think maybe that's where the good luck came from, but here's what I want to tell you. I think we should pick up all pennies and all quarters and all dimes and be reminded of who we can trust and put our trust in. Maybe you do that going forward. Maybe you'll say, I remember that preacher. He talked about trusting in God every time you saw a penny, every time you saw a dime. But I preached this story about the penny at a funeral. You know, we see a lot of things as Christians, especially as a pastor, I see things. And to be honest with you, I deal with some things that rock me to my core. It's not easy being human. We're not Jesus, we just follow him. And often, I have to stand in this space and proclaim a beginning where an ending feels very real. I preach sermons from this pulpit, and instead of a flowered cross, there is a funeral pall with a casket and a funeral spray. And I have to proclaim that there is a beginning where there is an ending. How can I do that? How can you do that? How can you enter the place where it seems that something is dead and look beyond that to it being a beginning? Easter, the resurrection. He is risen. That's how you do it. I'm just human. We're just human. But Jesus, he did it. In God we trust. Without the resurrection, that's just a fancy motto. But if you actually trust it and put it in your heart, that God is not a God of endings, but a God of beginnings, it can become a way of life. Not just at the beginning of your life, not just at the end of your life, but through it all. That's what Easter is for us, friends. It's a penny from heaven, a single day out of the year, a small shining reminder that God shows up right when we need him. Often in the dead places, often when we think the chapter is done, there's still another page. And when we're wondering if death has won, if our hope is in vain, if what they said was true, oftentimes God will silently whisper, "This is only the beginning. I make all things new." That, friends, is all we need. I have no other argument. I have no other plea. It is enough that Jesus died and that he was raised for you and for me. So take your penny, and if you didn't grab one, maybe take one with you. And when you see one on the sidewalk or the street, maybe don't just think of it as a penny anymore. Think of it as a sign and a reminder from heaven of who is worthy of putting your trust in.